Welcome to the Photo Banter Podcast. I'm your host, Alex Gagne, and on today's podcast, I speak with photographer Maarten de Boer. Maarten has worked with clients such as Time Magazine, GQ, Entertainment Weekly, and Samsung, to name a few. In this interview, I speak to Maarten about growing up in Scotland and Norway before moving to the United States, where he went on to college to study education before pursuing his passion of photography. I also speak to Maarten about his experience assisting in digital teching for legendary photographers such as Peter Lindbergh before breaking off to start shooting his own work for top-tier entertainment and editorial clients. Maarten has photographed people such as Helen Mirren, Chadwick Boseman, Tom Hardy, and George Clooney. And in this interview, I speak to Maarten about how he approaches portrait shoots, as well as an interesting shoot he did with actress Kristen Bell. I was excited to speak with Maarten about his journey with photography, so I hope you enjoy, and thanks so much for listening. Maarten de Boer, welcome to the podcast, man. Excited to have you. I'm excited to have you on, man. For people listening, I met Maarten on Clubhouse, of all places, which is this new app. If you haven't tried it, it's a unique place. There's some good stuff, some bad stuff, but I was excited to have you on and hear more about your career in photography, man. But I guess to start one point on Clubhouse, because I know we've talked about it a lot. I guess like
Sure.
what's your perspective? Like the last month or so, we've had a ton of conversations with a bunch of other photographers and stuff. What's your perspective on the new Clubhouse app, I guess?
I mean, I really like it. I mean, I think you enjoy it too. The
Mm-hmm.
guys, the guys and girls that I've met on the app from all over, and even some people that I've known for years and haven't really had a chance to like connect with. It's just an amazing place to just talk photography, and then it's very exciting at first. Everyone's talking photography, and now we've moved into like, what are you making for dinner?
Yeah.
What are you doing with your time? Like, it's a cool app. I think everybody has. It seems that most people have like sort of the same experience, which is like, it's exciting. We haven't gotten to talk to anybody for virtually a year,
Yep.
and now here we are, like all these like-minded people from our community, and it's amazing. And then it gets a little repetitive. Sometimes it's a little boring,
Yeah.
but then someone says something on the app, and then that sparks a discussion. It's kind of great.
Yeah.
I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying it a lot.
No, it's cool. I think for me, it just made me realize, like, obviously the last year has been crazy for everybody, but it makes you remember that like human interaction is such like an important aspect of life. Like when you don't have that, like the fact like last year I haven't been able to interact with like most of my friends like I normally would usually do, like going to parties or barbecues and stuff like that. So the app is just like, it's just been good to just shoot the shit with people about whatever,
Oh, I agree. I always make the joke that my wife is super excited that I'm on the app because now I have other people to talk to.
Yeah, man. But I guess for you, man, like creatively, obviously, like I said, been a crazy year for everybody. Like, how have you been doing? Like, have you still been inspired to make work? Like, I know you did a cool personal projects photographing, like I think like frontline workers and
Yeah.
healthcare people. But like overall, like, how's the last year been for you, man?
Yeah, it was. I mean, I'm sure it's similar to most other people, right? It was a little confusing. First, we didn't know what was going on. Initially go into a mode of acceptance, be like, okay, this is what we have to do. Nobody's working, like just everywhere. I mean, where you are, where I was, like the city just emptied out. It was like deserted on the streets.
Yep.
And then slowly I started getting the itch of like, oh, I got to do something. I've had, over the years, I've had series that I've committed to where it's just a very clean portrait. I mean, back in 2008, when Obama was running, I did a series called I Am Obama, and I ended up shooting, I think I intended on shooting like, 20, 25 people who were identified as Obama supporters. And that project quickly grew into, I think, over 500 portraits that I would shoot in my little office studio at the time. And it was super fun and rewarding. And so I applied that kind of mindset to shooting frontline workers during the pandemic. I started with like restaurants and like food banks, and because getting access to hospitals is kind of difficult. But then I had some work to show, and I got connected through, actually through people I knew on Instagram, with like doctors who worked at ERs. And yeah, I think, are you looking forward to the first one with the guy with the America hat?
This one.
Yeah, that's the whole series.
Yeah.
Or at least some of the series.
Yep.
And yeah, and it was something to do, and it was really rewarding, and it was also sort of like a personal challenge of mine to like, can I execute a shoot safely and, you know, not expose myself to unnecessary, like, you know, COVID virus. And so I figured out a way to do this. Basically, I would travel around with a 4x8 flat that I'd painted white, and I set up my light and my camera. I was about 10 feet away from everybody that I shot, and people would come in, stand in front of it, you know, we'd chit chat for a little bit, take their picture, and then they'd go back to work.
Yeah, I really like it. That's one thing I was going to ask you, because being that like you shoot entertainment, like I would imagine a lot of the work you do, like you have such short interactions with these people, and a lot of it's this kind of like one-off little portrait here and there, but like getting to like work on like an extended series, is that like something you like to do? Because I know you have some other projects on your website that are more series based. Do you enjoy that kind of work, I guess?
Yeah, I definitely enjoy this kind of work. And I really enjoy working with people who aren't celebrities, right? I don't want to call them real people, because of course celebrities are also real people, but
Yeah,
you know, like people who have different types of jobs and different types of challenges. I mean, what I found with this series, what the hardest thing I think for all of us is, you know, how do you emote through a mask, or how do you get to show a person when you can't see half of their face, right? Like I hope that most of them are smiling, or, you know, they're serious. And I think
you can tell
know,
she's smiling right here.
yeah, totally. I mean, and you know, I guess Tyra Banks was right? Like smizing works.
Yeah.
You know, so much of it is communicated through the eyes, and like, you know, a little bit through the eyebrows. It's kind of incredible. So it was really a rewarding thing to do. But then, you know, I just sort of kind of, I felt like things were changing, and I backed away from the series. And then we kind of, you know, in California, at least, you locked down again. And, you know, it was interesting.
I really enjoy these ones where it's like you set up right in front of like a location.
I love those.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah. I didn't do it. I think my first few, I didn't pull out. And then I started shooting in these really interesting places, like, you know, the emergency, like what's it, the emergency center at the hospital, like you're in the loading dock. So you want to pull out and show that. Like the cafe was a really cool spot to pull back and like show the restaurant that these people were working at.
No, it's awesome, man.
And it breaks it up a little bit, you know.
And those are pictures, like, you know, in like 10, 20 years, man, they're just gonna have, they're important to document this time period, that like when everyone's just wearing masks, hopefully we can get to the point where we're not. But like, I think it's important to document those times in history, you know?
Yeah, I agree.
And
I mean, I saw some people do some really incredible work. I wish I could remember her name. There's a woman out here in LA that went around and shot like these really iconic buildings and places that were just ghost towns. And I think she turned it into a book. I mean, I'm aware of a lot of photographers who try to turn their experiences into projects.
Yeah.
And I think I felt the need to do it because I just wasn't working, and I was kind of driving myself crazy.
Yeah, I feel you, man. Gotta keep shooting, man. It's like momentum.
Yeah.
I guess to go back, man, I was like, for people listening, like, where do you kind of grow up, and like how do you kind of first get into photography?
Yeah, so I mean, you want to go in the way back machine?
Yeah, man, let's take it all the way back, man.
So I was born in a small town in Scotland called Stonehaven, which is just south of Aberdeen. And I was born there because my parents, who are both Dutch, so I'm a Dutch national, but I happen to be born in Scotland. My father was working for an oil company in Aberdeen. So I was born in Scotland. I lived there till I was about 13. And then that summer we moved to Norway, also because of oil, the North Sea. And I went to an international school there, an American school in Stavanger, and until I graduated at 18. And having been in a sort of an American school system, it was sort of natural to then decide to go to an American university. So I applied to a bunch of schools here in the States, and I got into Webster University in St. Louis. So
was like going to college, was that your first time coming to the States?
No, my first time coming to the States was my sister. So I have two older sisters and one younger sister. My oldest sister, she graduated from the same school, and she went to the community college in Santa Fe. And my father and I took her to drop her off at school. And that was my first time in America. And I had friends all throughout my teenage years who were American, and they would come and tell me about like what America was, right? So my understanding of America was like Tombstone Pizza and, just like these random things. And because this was like early 1990s.
Yeah.
So like 91 to 95. And so I had a very skewed view of what America was. And I remember landing, we flew from Europe, and we landed in LAX. And I got out of the plane. I'm like, man, this is America. And there was like, I think it was like a Pizza Hut pizza they were serving at one of the places. We were hungry, so we're like, let's grab some food. And it was the first time I'd seen American pizza, and it was like this size, right? It was small, personal size pizza. Yeah. I was like, man, America's amazing. Like, and it was just like the little things. And then we flew to New Mexico, and then we dropped her off at school and came back through New York. So that was my first experience in America. It was a short trip, but it was impactful. Yeah. And then when I graduated school, I went to St. Louis, Webster University in St. Louis. But that same summer, when I was going to college, my parents got transferred to Tulsa, Oklahoma. Wow. And which is just, not Tulsa, but Bartlesville, which is an even smaller town just north of Tulsa. And so I spent my first summer in Bartlesville, Oklahoma, which was also very eye-opening.
Yeah, man. That's got to be interesting, man. Like, I mean, moving somewhere so different, and like, that's like got to be. I can't imagine. I mean, I've lived in the United States my entire life. I bounced around from different states, but like going from a different country to the United States got to be quite a change.
Yeah, I got a lot of like, and even so, Bartlesville, which had like a small population of like international people coming in and out because the oil company that was there was Phillips Petroleum. Mm-hmm. But I was still met with like, do you guys have polar bears? I'm like, no, it's Norway. We don't have polar bears in Norway. Like, do you guys have ice cream? Like, what about microwaves? And you were all these questions of like, it's looking back, I'm like, oh, it's cool that they were curious. Yeah. But the questions were like, wait, what? Yeah, of course we have microwaves in Norway. It's not a third world country.
Yeah, man, we got electricity, all that.
The whole thing.
So what were you doing in college? Like, were you already taking pictures at that point, or were you majoring in photography, or like what were you doing at Webster?
No, so I always joke that like I'm a little bit of a slow learner just in life.
Me too.
And so I didn't get to, the way I usually describe it is like, so in Norway, I think you're always, whatever you're exposed to as a kid, like is going to guide you later in life, right? So my father was a drilling engineer, or is a drilling engineer, but I knew I didn't have an interest in being a drilling engineer, right? Like my dad at the age of 12 could take apart like a lawnmower engine and put it back together. I didn't have that aspect of me. And then, my mother raised us in the home. And so, I wasn't going to be a mom, mm-hmm. But I also was exposed to a lot of teachers, and I had a hard time in school for a while. And so teaching was something I was really sort of drawn to. And so when I went to Webster, I was in their education program. I was initially planning on becoming like a special ed teacher. And I actually have my degree in special ed. It's like mild and moderate disabilities K through 12.
Wow.
With an emphasis in like emotional disorders. But while in school, so, and by the way, so because I was in Scotland and Norway, I'm not very exposed to like entertainment or billboards. And my understanding of photography was mostly like, National Geographic and photojournalism. And I was never really drawn to that. So I think it wasn't until I came to America and it started to sink in, where you see advertisements for things, you see billboards for things. Like, I started to see that photography meant more than just photojournalism.
Yeah.
So from my elective courses in school, I started taking black and white classes and like, the basics of photography, and realized I have a love for doing it, but I'm like entrenched in my education program. So it wasn't until like my fourth year in school that I was like, man, maybe I kind of shouldn't have been doing education. Like,
Dude,
I kind of want to be doing photography.
Like when you're looking back now, like I'm a little older, like the fact that you have to make a choice of like what you're gonna do for the rest of your life at like 17 or 18 years old
No,
is
it's
so
crazy.
fucking, because at that age you haven't done shit. Like you haven't
Yeah,
like been anywhere or done anything, but you have to like decide what you're gonna major in, what your career is gonna be. It's
right.
tough.
Like
It's
what your
tough.
life trajectory is going to be at that point. Like I didn't feel like a fully formed human until I was nearing my 30s, right? Like, so, and someone's asking me at 18 to decide like, well, what do you want to be? I don't know what I want to be.
Yeah.
But I remember the phone call I had to make, and I was talking to my mom, and I'm like, hey, I know, because I did a super senior year in school too. So I was in school for 5 years. And I was like, I know that I've been doing this education thing for the past 5 years, but I was really nervous. I was like, I kind of want to pursue photography when I graduate.
Yeah.
And I'm expecting that, like, well, I mean, you've just wasted your education, that lecture. But I didn't. My mom was like super supportive, and she's like, Martin, I believe in you. You're a smart guy. Like, whatever you apply yourself to, I'm sure, you'll work hard and be successful.
Yeah.
And it was just, a weight was lifted off my shoulders. And I appreciate that conversation so much, because who knows, that conversation could have gone differently. And I'm like, oh, you know what? She's right.
Definitely.
I should just go into teaching and commit to what I've already spent 5 years learning how to do. So I graduated school, but I've still had that little bit of me of like, I have to be responsible. And I had been a resident assistant at Webster for 4 years. And I don't know if you know what an RA is.
Oh yeah, man. God bless those RAs,
Okay.
man. You guys, like, I'm glad like, my RA in college went through hell, man.
Oh yeah, it can be a rewarding job, but it's also, I mean, having kids like enforce rules of other kids is like a crazy system in colleges, right?
Yeah.
So but I mean, I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the social aspect of being an RA and like helping out freshmen getting to college and like making the transition away from home into like, being successful there. And so, thinking that I needed a responsible job out of college, I went down to Florida, and my first job was like at Lynn University in Boca Raton. And I thought like, okay, I'll have this job. I was a resident director for on-campus living there. And I thought like, I'll go into a master's program for photography.
All right.
And I realized, I was like, no, I don't want to do that. I don't want more school. I just need experience. So I quit that job pretty quickly, right? Like, I stuck it out for about a year and then moved to Houston. Now, Houston, why Houston? Because now my parents were living in Houston, but they had to leave the country. So I was staying in their place, and I could live there rent free if I looked after their dogs.
Smart.
And while I was there, I was like, I'll just find photographers to work for. And in the meantime, I'll try to get a job at this camera store called the Houston Camera Exchange. And their tagline was, they're the last real camera store. And so they sold like new and used equipment. And it was awesome. Like, it was a great place to learn all these different types of cameras, medium format cameras that I hadn't been exposed to. Like, how do you load a Hasselblad, 220 back or, 120 back. And so I kind of cut my teeth there on learning the equipment. And then I started working for photographers as an assistant when I could. And that led me to a wonderful photographer named Arthur Meyerson.
Yeah.
And he was looking for a full-time assistant. And he's an commercial advertising photographer based in Houston, has had a long-standing career. I think he teaches now more than he shoots. Sorry, Arthur, if that's wrong.
Yeah.
But but I became his full-time first. And, one of his clients was Coca-Cola, and Coca-Cola would fly him around the world to shoot their annual reports and like their social companion piece that went with it.
Yeah.
So my first year being an assistant, I mean, we got to go to, let me see, one of the trips was Mexico City, Vietnam, Tokyo. Then we flew to Madrid,
Damn.
London. We went down to South Africa, Zimbabwe. In fact, this was all just one job, one trip. And it was a really, really cool experience and a lot of responsibility.
Was he still shooting film, or was
No, dude, it was all film.
What were like
35 chrome, dude.
Oh, wow. What were like some of your responsibilities, like working for him full time? What do you remember about working for him?
So responsibility, like being his first full-time in studio and then travel assistant, was everything. Like you had to pack the gear, you had to store and catalog the film. I mean, I used to have to make dupes of his, now we just save as.
Yeah.
Right. Like, oh, and if this file, I got to make a duplicate, save as, done. I used to spend a week at a time or days at a time in a lab or in his dark room making dupes of his chrome. And if people listening don't know what that is, so the chrome film, you're basically taking a picture of that picture on another piece of chrome.
Yep.
And what I learned from him in that process was color balance. Like it was a masterclass in understanding greens and magentas, and because that's how you have to. I don't know if you ever had to make dupes.
Yeah.
But it's you have to dial it in, just add a little more magenta, add a little green, like do the shift, and then you take it to the lab, have to do a snip test, then then run the film. So that was one aspect of it. Then when we would travel, it was everything. You had to anticipate every potential bad thing that would happen on a trip, right? Like you lost your film, where are you going to go buy more film? Where do we process these? Which labs do we process these films as we go? Because like, for example, when we were down in South Africa, this was just after 9/11. And so now you have all of these scanners everywhere in each airport, and we don't want to scan. And we were still unsure, right, at that time, like if you scan the film too many times,
yep,
then it will fog the film. And this is how we're shooting it. And all the film is on my back in a backpack. So we would process as we would travel. And so we had to find labs in each city. And it was a crazy amount of responsibility for a kid who basically had like minimal amount of assisting experience. Like I remember he would have me take, and again, now, like who uses a light meter anymore? I used to have to stand there with a meter in one hand and a spot meter in the other and give him readings based off of the averages of both the light meter and the spot meter of where he's shooting. And then I have to follow him. Oh, he's going that way. Okay, now I'm spotting metering this way. And one of my I remember this it's so clear. One of the first times he's having me do it, and we're outside in bright sunlight. And he's like, give me a reading of that thing over there. And so I take a reading, and then I ran over to the thing and took a reading. And he's like, what are you doing? I'm like, well, you wanted a reading of that thing over there. He's like, what do you think the difference is between open sun where you're standing and open sun 10 feet away? It's like, you don't have to run over there to meter it. And so
the detailed assistant, man.
Oh yeah, it was great. But he was right? Like, so there is no difference because the sun is so many miles away. It's not going to make a difference if I walk 10 feet over there.
Yeah.
So, it was a massive learning experience.
And at that point, were you like still taking photos for yourself on the side, and like being that you didn't go to photo school, were you kind of educating yourself on the history of photography and kind of looking at books or anything, or how did you kind of start learning more about the craft, I guess?
So it was that. So when I worked at Houston Camera Exchange, I would pick up those like how-to lighting instruction books, right, where they show you the photo on one page and then they draw the schematic on the other. I was reading a lot of that. What was nice about Arthur is you could also experiment with light stuff in studio. So if he had a shoot coming up, he would tell you how to light it. And there was also a transition period with him where his previous assistant was on for 3 months before you fully transitioned in. Yeah. So there was a transfer of knowledge there. So these lighting books, I now know today that I think they were all BS. Mm-hmm. Right? Because now I can look at like somebody's eyeball and you can see the catch light, and you know that like, oh, that's an octabox, or that's just that's an umbrella or whatever it is. And I know for a fact that like some of those schematics were just drawn because someone's like, oh, you need a schematic with this? Let me think. This is how I think I lit it.
Yeah, exactly. It's like some person shooting the picture and then some other dude is like writing up the book, and it's like two different people.
Yeah. Well, imagine, right? Like if somebody came to me, and I can do it because I have a book of sketches.
Yeah.
But if somebody came to you and was like, "Hey, we love this photo you took 10 years ago. Can you draw out a lighting schematic of how you lit it?"
Yeah.
You get close,
Yeah.
but unless you have a drawing of that job, there's no way you're drawing it accurately.
Yep.
So I know I was getting probably a lot of bad information at the same time of getting a lot of good information, but I think I was getting all the fundamentals. And I don't really, I had like a K1000. I then bought into like the Nikon system to shoot film on my own, but not really getting a lot of opportunities to shoot. And at this time too, is like the introduction of digital. What was it? The Fuji F1?
I don't even
Well,
remember.
there was like the first kind of pro digital camera that was probably like 4 megapixels and $20,000. So I was still very much in the film world. To be honest, the camera that I would shoot the most with was the little Olympus 35, the one with like the pull out sort of protective door. And it was just a 35 millimeter thing. And because I could process for free at the lab, I was just shooting roll after roll, but it was just point and shoot. Nice. What we use our phones for today, which was, was fun.
That's awesome. And like, I mean, obviously looking at your work now, it's very much portrait based. Like when did you kind of start getting into that type of work, or was kind of portrait photography always kind of your passion from the get-go pretty much?
No, I think I was always open to, other types of photography. So from Houston, I left and I moved to LA. My sister was living out here at the time. So trying to figure out, like, is it going to be New York? Is it going to be Los Angeles? And I also happened to be dating somebody who I'd met while traveling with Arthur, who lived in LA. So LA seemed to be like the natural place to go to.
Yeah.
And my sister being out here and being able to live with her made it all very affordable. And so I moved out here and I started assisting whoever I could. It was fashion or cars or tabletop, like whatever, it didn't matter. And so there I started getting introduced to all of these different sides of our industry. And along the way, I think I figured out that, like, okay, I like people. I like the interaction between photographer and subject more than photographer and object.
Yeah.
Right. Like it was cool to be on car shoots where there's super long days and you're chasing the light and like we're in these really beautiful locations, but I'm not a car guy. So I didn't have the passion behind the object. And I never responded to like being in studio and shooting, tabletop. That I didn't, I kind of bought, like, I remember one shoot I was on as an assistant. I think there was like a 25-minute conversation about whether the spoon next to the yogurt should have a little bit of yogurt on it, a lot of yogurt on it. Should it look like we've just eaten the yogurt and like there's a smear of and I was just like, yeah, this isn't for me.
I know, man. I did a year at Hasbro, the toy company, shooting toys for like e-commerce and stuff. And it was like taking like Spider-Man figurines with like tweezers and like, cause they weren't even like the like factory made toys. They're like, what do they call it? Like the test ones.
Oh, okay.
And you got to like put like wax on them to put them together. And I'd be like, dude,
right.
Fuck this. Like, I can't do it. I got shaky hands, man. I'm like,
yeah, right. So I was just like, oh man, like I realized that's not for me. And then, okay, so where are the fields where we have people? And so I work on some fashion shoots. And then I'm like, I love fashion shoots because the talent of the model, the talent of the stylist is really important in those. But I don't understand. I'm not the guy that knows designer names and like understands what the trends are.
Yep.
So I started to realize, like, okay, well, I don't think I would ever be as successful as a fashion photographer. And then living in LA, I'm just like, dude, it's entertainment capital of the world. Everywhere you drive, there's billboards, there's advertising, there's actors here. So I started shooting to make a little extra money. I started shooting headshots of up and coming actors, like people who needed headshots. And so I'd run around LA and we would shoot in just like open light spaces with colorful walls. And,
is that still like a big business out there, like the headshot thing? Because I always heard about it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I think it is, like, because it's still necessary. Like people, where they're presenting their headshot has changed, right? Like, I don't think people print the traditional headshot as much, but you need to put it on like LA Casting and You need to be able to submit those shots. Again, I don't know if like iPhones and everybody having access to cheaper cameras but good quality has changed the industry. I'm sure that maybe you can't charge as much as you used to, but I think it's like everything else. I'm sure there's still photographers out there that like the quality of their product is so high that people are willing to pay not $300 but $3,000 to be shot by this person.
Definitely.
But I did that for a while, and to make a little extra money and you know, sort of just practice photography with willing subjects, right? Because I also realized along the way that I'm also not a photojournalist so much. Like I don't know if I have it in me to like photograph people who necessarily may not want to be photographed or to document the scene. I say that with like a little asterisk, but yeah, so being in LA and being so entertainment heavy, I realized that like I love these shoots that I'm on for photographers where it's entertainment based. We're shooting for a billboard or we're shooting for a magazine cover, like, you know, and we're working with people. It seemed to marry all the things I loved about photography into one place. So I started trying to figure out how to gain more of those clients and break into that world, which was, you know, sort of interesting.
Yeah, well, I'll get to that. I had to ask you about, man, because you got to work with like as an assistant, like you worked. You told me a story, but we got to talk about it. You got an opportunity to work with Peter Lindbergh, rest in peace, legend of the game. How's your kind of experience working with him, and like how'd that kind of come about?
So I'd been an assistant for a long time. I then transitioned into digital capture, right? So because not digital fusion, industrial color, which was started in New York, had started sending their techs out to LA for these shoots. And I was very curious about what they were doing and realized like, oh, they make a little more money than assistants do. And like, this is the future of photography in the sense of like digital, it's moving to digital. So I started educating myself on digital, and I was teching here and there. Then I partnered with a photo lab in town called, was it LA Photo? Oh my God.
I know there's like A&I. That's the one I used to go to.
No, it wasn't A&I. It was, I think it was LA Photo. But, oh no, sorry. No. It was Pro One Photo. It was called Pro One. So they wanted to start their own digital capture company, and I had some knowledge, and so we partnered up. And in that process, I met a guy named Sean Keel, and Sean Keel wanted to learn how to do digital. I think Sean is still out there doing digital today for people like Peggy Sirota. I'm not sure. I haven't talked to Sean in a long time, but so he used to print Peter Lindbergh's work at a different lab. And so when Peter was coming to town and he needed digital tech services, he already had that connection. So Sean was like, hey, Peter's coming to town. You know, we need to rent him everything. And so we started working for Peter, and we always had 2 techs on set. And yeah, so that was the first time I met Peter. It was a shoot in Malibu. I think it was an advertising job. And I don't know if I told you this story, right? But like, I still remember to this day. So it's Peter Lindbergh, and he just walks off with his camera to just shoot, and he wants everything converted to black and white. So he's shown me how he wants Peter Lindbergh showed me how he wants his black and whites to look, which by itself is a masterclass, right? Like people would pay big money to learn Peter Lindbergh's like black and white recipe. So I get that for free. And his assistant brings me cards. I'm downloading cards. And as I'm clicking through, I'm like, oh man, like these aren't super sharp.
Yep.
Like everything has a little bit of motion blur. And my experience before working for Peter was, you know, and as you know, when digital first started coming out, every photographer's like, is it sharp? Is it sharp? Is this sharp? Is it pin sharp? And he was like, yeah, it's sharp, or no, it's not. And everyone's obsessed with sharpness. So the files start coming in, and I'm looking at the screen. I'm like, oh man, I can't be the one to tell Peter Lindbergh like his work's out of focus. So he walks in with the client, and he's like, oh, can I see some of the photos? I was like clicking through, and he's like, how does it look? And instead of just telling him what I had seen, because again, client is there, so I want to be sensitive, I just zoom in on the photo, and I'm like, oh, it looks like this. And I make sure show him a blurry part in the loop. And he looks at it, he goes, I like it. Looks more like film, no? And he's just like, perfect. Looks more like film. Like that's going to be my rule from this point on. If a client or someone says like, is it sharp? Oh, it looks a little blurry. I'm like, yeah, but it looks and feels more like film.
Yeah.
And I was just, that was my first like really nervous experience with Peter, but he's such an amazing human being that I'm like, it was great.
No, that's amazing. Like you got to work with all these different types of photographers. And the one question I was going to ask for you, like, obviously like people listening to this who want to pursue photography, like what advice would you give to them? Like, was assisting a useful experience for you? And like, if someone was looking to get into assisting, do you think they should just like try to work with one person, exclusively, or bounce around and try to work with as many different types of people? Or like, what advice would you kind of give to someone that's trying to get their foot in the door, just kind of early stages,
Yeah, I mean, I think there's advantages to both, right? I think if you can be a first and work consistently for like a really big successful photographer, then I wouldn't advise you to sort of shop around and trying to work for other people. Like absorb as much of that as you can, and like, because that puts you in a different position when you want to exit and be a photographer. If you were like me and you were working for, I would work for anybody at least once. And I did. There were some people I worked for. I was like, I'm not gonna work for that person again. But it was really advantageous to me to like learn on every single job. What is it like to shoot cars? And something you learn from cars, you take to product, or you learn from product, you can take into portraiture. And so I got to learn all these different lighting techniques. It's actually one of the sadder things about being a photographer is once you transition out to that world, your exposure to other people and how they light things or run a set stops immediately. And so I'm learning all of these different things and like taking in the good and the bad and like what I like, what I would apply in my own career and what I wouldn't apply. And then once you did make the decision to leave into the real world, everything you've learned it just sort of immediately stops, and then you apply it. You have to really push to learn other techniques or other business practices. But I think assisting is the best way to learn not only the photography portion of the business, but the business of the business. Like, how do you interact with clients? How do you bill? How do you deal with client demands and executing them in like high stress situations or low stress situations? Like it to me, it's, I think we've talked about it before, and I'm sure it's lots of people understand this. Like what we do as photographers, like pressing the button is like 5% of the overall business of what we have to do, right? So much other time is spent on 95% of it is spent on file management, client management, prepping for shoots, executing or like finishing shoots, delivering shoots. That the time on set is like the smallest part. It's the part I love the most, but it definitely is like the smallest commitment of time for us.
Yeah, even like little stuff I learned like when I was assisting. Like I was lucky to work with like some great photographers like Gary Land, who we've talked to, and some other really good guys, dude Tiber. And he would always, like, if he could, he would cut you a check, all the assistants, the day of, like at least, like if he could, like at the end of the shoot.
That's awesome.
And he always paid for lunch, like little stuff, like if you're going to lunch, he always paid. And I was like, man, that's like real. I always respected that little stuff, like how he treated his like crew, staff, or whatever,
Yeah, and I've had these conversations with clients before too, where I don't see all the hardest photographers that I had to work for, sort of the ones that have not the greatest attitudes. I don't see their names much anymore. I think our industry has shifted, and there's an understanding, just like I think like the world no longer has supermodels. The world no longer has like superstar photographers. At least it's not generating new ones, right? Like, because I think clients want a more pleasant experience, or they're paying attention to how photographers are treating their crew. And that has become more important. So those sorts of behaviors, right, that like stood out for you when you were working. Like, oh man, they paid me at the end of the day. I could maybe count on one hand how many people paid me at the end of the day, and I
Yeah, man.
appreciated it.
Those
But
dude,
most people were like, you had to chase them 60 days later for that check.
it would be like the jobs you're like end up chasing for would be for like, it'd be like a 1-day editorial shoot for like $300, and like, come
Oh
on,
yeah.
man, you're making me chase you down for 4 months, bro. Like, it's just, it's, I don't know, not the.
Oh man, I think I still have outstanding invoices from 7 years ago.
Man. Anyways,
If I ever come across those photographers, I'm gonna be like, dude, you still owe me this much money.
Yeah, man. And obviously the one thing, that big challenge for everybody is kind of when you're assisting or digital teching and you have aspirations to shoot, like making that transition to shooting full time. Like, how did you kind of do it? Was it kind of balancing a little bit of both for a while, or like what was kind of your transition to the point where you started working with clients yourself?
Yeah, so I'd heard stories about how other photographers had done it. Maybe they had assisting, and then like just one day they up and quit, and like, I'm never doing this again. And now they're shooting. I really planned it. I planned it out, and I transitioned into being a digital tech from an assistant because I did recognize that there was more money to be made there, and not out of greed, but out of sort of necessity.
Yeah.
I wanted to go into that field so that I could save. I was always really kind of good at saving and not spending my money on like just stupid stuff. And I managed to like save up enough money, and I had a conversation with my girlfriend at the time, now my wife, and I was like, listen, I just can't do it anymore. Like, I can't work, because every new client that you picked up as a tech or as an assistant, you have to sort of be pliable and adjust to their style. Yeah. Right? Like maybe somebody's a yeller, or somebody who likes to go fast, or somebody prefers slow, and everybody has like a difference in their personality that you have to adjust to be good at what you do as an assistant or tech. And I just got to a point where I had a little bit of success shooting. I'd picked up a couple clients, but like, I don't feel like I really did it at a time when I was confident that I'm like, yeah, this is it. Like, I can transition and never assist again or never tech again. I looked at my bank account and I said, okay, like if I don't work, if I make zero money for, and I think at the time it was like 8 months or a year or something, I can meet my bare minimum monthly expenses. Mm-hmm. And I had a conversation, with Megan, and I was like, I kind of want to do this. I can't pick up another photographer and like learn their idiosyncrasies. I was like, I think it's time. And every day you're not working towards your own goal. So what I used to talk about was, let's take teching, for example. If you get called for a 1-day job, you have the initial phone call, right? You have the prep day, then you have the shoot day, then there might be multiple post days or at least one post day. So every 1-day commitment is 3 days.
Yep.
And if you have 10 jobs, that could be 30 days. Your entire month is gone, like working for somebody else. Now you're still making money, but you're not pursuing your, reaching out to clients, doing test shoots, whatever it is. So every day you work for somebody else is a day you've lost for yourself.
Yep.
And I came to a realization, and I had that conversation with Megan, and she was super supportive, and she was like, okay, like, let's do it. And so I did it. I sort of phased myself out of teching. I had other, freelance techs that I would give the work. So I wasn't just leaving my clients at the time, just high and dry. And it just became sort of a natural phasing out. And I found that like now I had the time to put into test shoots or emailing or reaching out to clients or even picking up like a no paying job for a small publication, which I could then show another photo editor, like, look who I shot.
Yeah.
And so like it accumulates. All that time put in starts to pay out.
Yep.
Yeah.
And who are like some of the first clients you were working with? Because obviously entertainment is a really competitive industry, and a lot of people want to be able to, you've gotten to photograph some amazing people, be it like Dave Chappelle or Chadwick Boseman.
Hey, there he is.
Yeah, I know. That's why I saw him right there. And yeah, but like, how do you kind of get your foot in the door into that obviously super competitive industry?
Yeah, so I've found that whether you were chasing commercial advertising in this field or editorial in this field, that you needed to show, you really did need to show that you could work with talent, right? Like, you can't just show a book of people, because clients are a little unsure of like, can you deal with celebrity? Because celebrity, even though they are also people, there's slight different complications that come with it, right? Like maybe it's ego, maybe it's how you conduct yourself on set. You can be a little more sensitive. And so I think at the time, a lot of clients would look at your book, and even if they like the work, if you're not showing them faces of celebrities, then they're going to be hesitant to put you on a job. Now, again, it may be different today, but back then that's kind of what I was, the vibe I was getting. And so I had been working for a woman, Allison Jackson, who had made a career of shooting lookalikes. And I thought to myself, like, well, I could apply this to what I do. Like, I'm going to shoot lookalike celebrities and present that in a book to clients. And if they bring it up, I'll tell them the truth. But if they don't, I'll just let it slide.
Fake it till you make it, baby. Fake it till you make it.
Feel like you shoot someone who looks like Dave Chappelle, and they're like, "Oh man, you shot Dave Chappelle?" Yeah, sure. So I started putting out the call. I used I used LA Casting to be like, I put breakdowns in LA Casting. It's like looking for celebrity lookalikes, and I got hundreds of responses. Nobody looked like who they said they did.
No.
Right? I mean, there was one person that said, "Listen, I look like Ben Affleck and Bruce Willis."
Yeah, okay.
I was like, "Look, dude, you cannot look like both of them. You either look like one or you look like the other."
25 years apart.
Yeah, exactly. And so, and I was getting a little bummed out that I wasn't really gaining traction in there, because I thought at the time I was like, this is such a good idea and nobody's doing it. Like I can differentiate myself by doing this. And I had a roommate at that same time who worked at a nonprofit, and that nonprofit had celebrities that would come in and speak. And for over a year, I kept talking to her, and she would talk to her boss about, we should document, we should have portraits of these people that come in. And, finally, I don't know what happened. The stars aligned. Her boss was like, sure, have them come in. And I started shooting for them. So I do credit them as being my first client that gave me access to celebrities to shoot portraiture. And I've been working with them from the beginning. I mean, I think it's been 7, 8 years or 9 years. It's been forever.
Wow.
And from that, I then, and then the second client I would give credit to giving me opportunities to start shooting jobs was TV Guide.
Oh yeah.
There was a photo editor there, Geraldine, who I had worked with on lots of shoots for other photographers. And I made her aware that I was shooting some celebrities, and I would show her the pictures, and she was very nice to convince her photo director that to give me a shot. And they give me a shot. And then I shot more jobs for them. And then I shot one of their TCA style portrait studios. And I'd worked on years and years of these portrait studios where, it's a lot of people, it's high volume portraiture of celebrities and actors in a single day or over the course of a week. And I loved it. I loved everything about it. And they gave me my first opportunity doing that. And then I from there, I now had a book. I had work to show other clients. Like, look, I've worked with these celebrities. And now they had confidence to then hire me for their job.
You had momentum, and you made a good point there. Like, I think we were talking about it a couple of days ago. Is like, you have to let people know, editors or producers, what you want to do, because they don't know what you want to do. Like, you have to kind of you just have to ask, like, hey, if you ever want something like this, I'm interested in it, and just kind of put the feelers out there. And it's like, it took me a while to kind of have that confidence, just to kind of let people know, like, hey man, I'm interested in shooting this, so if you ever need help, let me know. So I think it's smart.
Well, right. I mean, I think I have the same feelings as you, right? Depending on, I know a lot of people talk about it like imposter syndrome. I don't think I've ever suffered from imposter syndrome, but I do identify with the feeling of I don't want to be rejected, so therefore I'm not gonna reach out to this person and then never hear back. But I have realized over the years that you just have to get over that. Now having reached out to so many people and never having heard back, but then you do hear back from someone. You're like, oh, I love your work. Or later they're like, oh, it took me a while to believe people when they're like, oh no, I love your work. Like, I've been looking at it for years. I'm like, well, why is this the first time we're talking?
Yeah.
but again, I wasn't being proactive about reaching out to them, and I needed to be more proactive. I needed to like just say hi and like introduce my work, and like, yeah, I think it's always a good idea to be like, I would love to shoot this. I know that this is the kind of content that you shoot. I'm really also interested in this thing. Yeah, it's always a benefit, I think.
Yeah, I learned.
I need it.
Yeah, I learned like real quickly. Even if I like email like 100 people, even just because they don't respond, it doesn't mean they're not looking at my work. Because I've had that
That's right.
before, where it's like they didn't respond to whatever promo I sent them for, but then I ended up getting a call because it was this like I was still on the radar, but it
Right.
just kind of pops up, It's interesting.
Well, and I've heard it again and again, right? That like it's on the 6th viewing or the 8th viewing. Like you have to be persistent without being annoying in your self-promotion, because you may be sending it to them at a time when none of what you're showing them doesn't apply to what they're doing, but now your name sticks out, and then your name pops up again a couple months later, and then a couple months later and then one day they're like, oh man, I need somebody for this type of work, and then they remember you, or your promo card just happens to come in at the right time when they need somebody.
Yeah.
I mean, I think in this industry we get jobs 100 different ways. Sometimes it's just perfect timing. Sometimes it's a recommendation. Sometimes it's your work got you the job. Like, who knows?
Yeah, it's crazy. And one thing I'm always just curious, being you're a portrait person, I shoot a lot of portraits myself. Like, what's kind of your process? Like, once you get that assignment to go photograph someone, like, do you have like a process of kind of how you're gonna approach it, or like how what's it kind of your process with approaching like assignment work? I guess.
I mean, I guess it's the same. That's a good question. I'd like to try and get as much information about the assignment as I can. Like, and of course, I think naturally I don't have to ask depending on who the client is, right? Like, if I'm familiar with the client, I kind of understand that if it's this client, they want like a happier, upbeat. If they want this one, they want it to be maybe a little more somber or serious vibe. And if I don't know, I have those conversations with the client. And then I go to sketching, and I sketch out my light. I figure out, are we shooting in studio? Are we shooting in location? If it's location, can I see those photos or can I pre-scout the location? And then I can actually show you.
Yeah.
So this is my sketch book, right? So in here, I don't know if we can see this.
Now you can
in
see
here
it.
is every single.
So is that like lighting sketches?
Yeah, these are all my lighting sketches. Every single job I do, this is my process. And what it allows me to do is then I can sketch out how I'm going to shoot it, and then I can build out my equipment list.
Wow, that's smart.
And figure out what to do. And I mean, this is volume 2. I have another one back there that's all filled up. And it for me, it just made sense to sketch it. Then I can break down the gear, and then I can put in that gear order. I don't really rely on my assistants to do that. I like to figure all that out ahead of time. And then yeah, like I don't really pull. I know some photographers like pull example shots to like mood boards to show, and they put them up at the studio or to show like posing or tone. I've never really done that. I don't know why. I always thought it was a little odd to pull other photographers' work.
Yeah.
Even though I do believe that all photography at this point is somewhat derivative of past photographers, and we honor those photographers by appreciating that pose or that look, and we want to do something similar. But I never felt comfortable about having someone else's work up on my set.
And I feel like with entertainment, it could like backfire, because you could be showing like some other celebrity, and that person, they might not like that person. So it's like, why are you showing me this person? Like, this shoot's about me, man. Like,
Yeah, I do. I never thought about that. I could totally go sideways.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So, so for me, I do think about it. Right. And I have made, like, sometimes I do create mood boards or like creative decks for my clients that has photography in it and examples, because words aren't always enough to communicate what it is that you're seeing or thinking. So it is good to pull examples of that work, or like color tones or whatever it is, so that we can all be on the same page going into the shoot. But a lot of times I'm like, oh, I really want to do this thing, and I just can't find the example of it. right? Like for example, the Chadwick Boseman shot, the one that's right here that has like the light scratches across it. That was an inspiration from a Hugh Jackman shot that they did for
Wolverine
on Entertainment Weekly. Yeah, the Wolverine, and he had the claws, but the claws were casting a shadow on his face. And I did the reverse, right? I had it look like somebody scratched light scratches across his face. But it, again, it's derivative but not copy. And it was inspirational to see that shoot. And I was like, oh, I love that. How can I make it different and make it mine? But I can't find an example of that anywhere. So so sometimes I do just have to rely on like either it's a client that trusts me, or I have to explain it in words to be like, no, this is what we're doing. Yeah, I mean, does that kind of answer the question about?
No, definitely,
process?
man. That's great. Yeah, the sketchbook thing's great. I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
And I mean, then another thing I always ask everybody is like obviously like finding your voice as a photographer. It's a hard thing. Like your style, your aesthetic. Like how do you kind of view your work? And is it something that's kind of continually evolving? Because like certain people just have it. Like we were talking about it. Like Dan Winters, when you see his photo, it's his, or like a Platon or like an Avedon, and it's hard to find that. But like, what's your perspective? Do you think you need to have like a real niche in this business, or do you feel like you can just kind of have the creative like approach, just kind of try different things, or what's your kind of thought on terms of like?
I mean, naturally for me, I always want to be evolving and I want to be getting better, but like I don't think I just jump ship and do something that's completely like out of left field.
Yep.
I think my evolution is like starting from where I'm comfortable and what I know and adding in an element, right? Like playing with projection or playing with the scratch on the face, but I still all the traditional elements of like portraiture or how I light and the ratios are there. Because I think at its core, I do understand that I'm being hired based off of my existing body of work. So if I present something that's 180 degrees different than what I've already been doing, I'm afraid that the client will be like, yeah, this is cool, but what? Like we hired you to do this thing. And some jobs have that flexibility, right? There's more flexibility in editorial than there is commercial advertising. But I was actually on Clubhouse a couple of weeks ago, and I jumped into a room where they were like, oh, let's review each other's Instagram account.
Yeah.
And I'm game, like random person, like review my account. And somebody had pointed out on my Instagram account, he's like, hey man, so what happened in like 2018? Like, it looks like your feed went from this like beautiful sort of simple lighting portraiture to something that's like, it starts to be all a little more complex or like, and I actually had to go to my own account, scroll down and look. And I was like, oh man, this guy's kind of right. Like, I don't have an answer for him. Like, I have no idea why my work changed. Like, I have a daughter around that time. Like, maybe it's sleep deprivation that allowed me to see it differently. Who knows? Or like, just my life is now different, so therefore my work is different. But I do look at old work, and I always want to see growth. I always want to see it, even if it's subjective. At least my subjective view of my work is that it is getting better. Yeah. And I don't know if I don't have a Patrick Holick, like this is my signature. I don't have a Martin Scholler, like this is the one look, or like Dan Winters, right? Like what you mentioned, you can look at a Dan Winters shot and be like, oh damn, that's a Dan Winters. But I have gotten feedback from people over the years, which they do look at a picture and they're like, I knew it was yours. Or like, I thought that it was yours because of the way that it felt.
Yeah.
And for people, when they look at my work, it has more to do with like how the talent looks, not necessarily in their lighting, but in their comfort level or how they look in front of the camera. And it's feedback that always made me really uncomfortable for a long time, because I didn't know. Like, I could show you my book, I could show you how I lit it, I can tell you the equipment that I used, I can tell you the lens that I shot it on, but how did I get this one person to look that comfortable? I don't know. So just over time with repetition and like, I constantly joke around, like, I think I've literally shot almost everybody that's a working actor.
Yeah, do you have, man? Like, I was looking at you have shot so many damn people, man. Hey,
it's a lot of people. But over time, like, I got more and more comfortable with that feedback, because even though I didn't quite understand what it is that I was doing, I was getting that result consistently. And I had to boil it down to, like, it must be the way that I interact with talent.
Definitely.
That allows me to, like, get most of the people feeling comfortable. It doesn't always work, but for the most part, it works most of the time.
Yeah, you got any tricks, like when you got someone who's coming in, like it might be an early morning shoot, they're still tired from the night before, like, or they're just not in the mood to be photographed, like are there like anything you kind of do to kind of ease the mood, or like?
Yeah, I think generally overall, my approach is like, I know, because I've worked, again, we talked about assisting, I worked for a lot of different personalities. I'm not the type of photographer, I do not have a bigger ego than the talent in front of me, right? Like, I will always default to their mood, and I will be pliable enough to work around how they are, because in a lot of what I've done so far in my career have been these, like, someone comes in, we have 5 minutes. Well, I'm not interested in, like, exerting dominance over them and, like, making them do what I want. I want to explore, like, I'll let them be there. If they want to smile, they'll smile. If I need to get a smile out of them, I'll let them be themselves for a little while, and then I'll crack a dad joke. And sometimes the dad joke fit. Like, I shot Spike Lee, and I think Spike Lee is sort of known for not wanting to smile in front of camera. And I gave him the direction of, like, hey, how about a smile? And he's like, no. And then I was like, well, how about if I tell you a joke? He was like, don't do it. And
he was like dead serious. And he was like dead serious.
Yeah, he's dead serious. I was like, well, how about if I tell you a joke? He goes, please don't. And he knew in that moment, because it's kind of a rude response or whatever, but he laughed at himself telling me not to tell him a joke.
Yeah.
And then so he smiles, and I took that photo. And so I have a picture of him smiling.
But then did he get pissed that you took the picture of him
smiling? No, not at all, because I think he knew, like, it was just a fun interaction where, so it doesn't really, I don't really care how I get to the point.
Yeah.
Like, I'll bend myself, and my personality doesn't matter. I've never thought that my personality and the core of who I am matters in getting to the final result.
Yeah.
Right. So, like, I don't mind. I'll make fun of myself. I'll tell a bad joke and have them laugh at how terrible the joke is.
Yep.
Or I'll just give them the direction sometimes and be like, hey, let's pretend I said something funny, and most people will be like,
yeah.
They'll smile and laugh. So I try to make the exchange as easy as possible, because I struggled with this for a long time. I was like, well, I don't understand. Like, actors are in front of the camera. This is their job. Like, this is what they do. Why are so many actors uncomfortable? And it dawned on me that, well, because actors are rarely ever asked to look into the lens. And usually when they're acting and they're doing their job, they're pretending to be somebody else.
And they're playing off someone else, like in a scene.
Right. And they have other people in the room, right? Like, they know what their motivation is, and they know, like, the lines, they think about their lines, and they're incorporating it naturally. But photography is a completely different animal. I'm asking them to look directly into me. Like, I'm going to take your picture, smile for me, don't smile for me, scowl, like, whatever it is. And I don't like it. I hate my photo being taken. So, the fact that we're even recording this interview makes me uncomfortable. No, I'm just kidding. But so I maybe I come from just a more of a sympathetic place.
Yeah.
Where I also understand that this is not the most natural thing to do. So let's just sort of explore how uncomfortable this is together.
No, that's
right.
Good. That's good advice, man. One shoot I had to ask you about, I was looking on your website. I thought was awesome. You did this shoot with Kristen Bell, and I thought
I love this shoot.
Yeah, it seemed like a little different than what you normally do. I was just kind of curious, like, the backstory, what it was for, and like your overall approach, because it came out really cool.
So I worked this was for American Way magazine, which is the magazine that you see in the pocket of your airline, right? Yeah. When everyone gets back to flying again. And American Way for a period of time was putting celebrities on their cover. I don't think they do it right now, but I worked with a wonderful photo director there, and she calls, and we'd done a couple of shoots already. And I knew for them, they always wanted whatever project that the talent we were shooting, they wanted a nod to the project, but not hit you over the head this is their character, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Kristen was being interviewed about her role in The Good Place. And The Good Place is about like, this person goes to hell or heaven, and but it's very, very surreal, right? So the photo director calls me and she's like, hey, Martin, I have this crazy idea, but but like, hear me out. And I was like, sure, I'm into it. And she describes to me that she wants to do, because of the surrealness of the show, she wants to do a shoot that has, oh my God, why am I blanking on his name?
It's all right.
No, who's this artist?
Uh,
Oh my God, it'll come to me.
yeah, no worries.
So this is all derivative of his art, right? The falling man, the apple. His art is very surreal. I forget. It's gonna come up. It's gonna pop into my head after we sign off.
Don't worry about it.
So she pitches this idea, and I'm like, oh my God, I love it. I see it. I see exactly what she wants to do, and I was game. Like as soon as she described it to me.
Mm-hmm.
And then the complication is like, oh, but we have to shoot this at a hotel in Hollywood.
Yeah.
Like this wasn't shot in studio. I had to figure out like how do I put a massive apple in a room? You know, how do I do all these things? And like it was a cool challenge to figure out how we executed this, which of course needed a lot of post work, right?
Mm-hmm.
But how do we shoot it in a way that at least makes it feel a little more real? And yeah, dude, like this is the result. And this first photo is one of my favorites. I think I have it as my like background when I send people.
Yeah, man, it really stuck out for me.
Transfers.
Yeah, yeah, because we were talking about like a lot of times, like with portraiture, especially the entertainment stuff. It's like, yeah, you're stuck in like some conference room, and you can get, you just set up the seamless, and it can get super monotonous. And like talking to you, I know over time you kind of started building your own sets and doing whatever you could to try something different, because yeah, the seamless can get pretty boring pretty quick.
Yeah, no, exactly, and so I was always into the shot before where she's standing holding the apple. Like I think that's a Schmidley background that we shot, that we hung in the room.
Wow.
The shot of her falling, we just shot on like a little, 4 foot wide seamless that was cropped out. I just had her turn in position, and then the background there was just the outside courtyard of the hotel we were shooting at. Magritte. Yep. Magritte is the artist that this was all derived from. I knew it would pop back in.
And for a shoot like this, like how much time do you get with her? Because you got a lot of different takes on this.
Yeah, I mean, I think total shooting time with her, we probably had not including like hair and makeup, right? Yeah. I think we probably had an hour.
Wow, man, you guys got a lot done in an hour.
Yeah, dude, we're down to business. But she is also fantastic. Like, so there's all of this pre-planning, right? Like we've pitched the idea, like she's pitched it to the publicist, like everyone's game for how this is going to be shot. And she shows up that morning, and I was like, and I've shot Kristen a few times before, and I was like, hey, Kristen, how's it going? Like she's sitting down for glam. And I was like, so do you know what we're shooting today? And she's like, no, I have no idea. And so I had to run her through the creative of the shoot, like on the spot. And she just looks at it, she goes, yeah, that's great. I love it. It's great. And like just nails it all the way through.
Is that like something you typically do with like talent? Like when they come in, you might have an idea or a mood or a look you're trying to get, like you do kind of walk them through the process usually?
Yeah, it depends. It depends on the shoot. Some jobs don't have the time for it, right? Other jobs they do. Or if there's, like, for example, if you're shooting like a gallery shoot where we have to execute like 7 different ideas in a so I've done these jobs where, like the creative for it, they don't know where they're going to land. So they have like 7 different basic sketches of like what the final art is going to look like.
Yeah.
But they may call for 7 different lighting setups. So I've done it before where we've set up, like a 9-foot seamless in a warehouse, and I've built a lighting setup around that my assistants know, when we call out like scenario A or scenario B, you're turning off and on packs, and we have to transition through. And in those situations, even if the timing is tight, I have to walk the talent through a basic visual so they understand like this one feels happy and this one feels moody and this one is you're sitting and this one you're standing, because that direction is different than sort of an editorial shoot where we can dance a little more and move around a little more.
Yeah.
So every job is different. It's always better. And I mean, to be honest, going back to like a Peter story, I noticed early on that Peter tended to do this with everybody he shot. Before the shooting started for any of his jobs, he would go on a walk with the talent.
Wow.
I don't know what he said. I don't know what was discussed. I don't know if he just like, who knows? But it would always be like 10, 15 minutes. And I don't even think they talked about the shoot. I would imagine that Peter was just talking to them about life, right? Just to make them more comfortable. And so, yeah, I always recommend, if you can, like, have those conversations, walk someone through what you're going to be doing that day.
That's some like real Zen stuff, man. It's like,
yeah, dude.
I like it, dude.
I always wanted to be a fly on the wall, right? I want to land on his shoulder and just listen into what that conversation is before the shoot.
Yeah. And obviously, like, the longer you've been doing this, the projects get bigger and bigger. Like, has this like the leadership role? Because obviously on these shoots, you're the photographer and everyone's looking to you for what you want and like how your stuff executed. Has that something you've always just been kind of natural at, being a leader, or is there like anything you kind of learned and like approaching these bigger productions to make sure they kind of go smoothly, I guess?
No, I think it's definitely a skill that I've had to develop and learn more, because like, even in the beginning when you're younger, and then you're also relying on like your friends to be your assistants and help you out. If I walked onto the set one day and I started puffing my chest out or acting like a leader, like I don't know if that would have gone really well. So it's a different interaction in the beginning as you work with, newer people or just like people you haven't worked with before. Then those relationships change as well. And I have settled into, again, I have my like sketchbook, and I do like to, at the beginning of the day, if it's a big complicated shoot, if we have multiple setups, we break out the sketchbook, we talk over all the sets, and like, my assistants are fantastic people who are really good at what they do. And so they can look at the lighting setup and approximate where everything goes, and then we can dial it in. So I've done more and more of that over the past few years, of like, little team huddle, and you just walk through the equipment or how you want it set up, and then everyone does their job.
Yeah.
It's more natural. Like, it's not really, I didn't really go into it, be like, okay, I'm the leader, listen to me.
No, I get
just
it.
sort of, yeah.
No,
people, I think naturally, oh, sorry.
No, keep going.
I think people naturally sort of look to the photographer for the direction anyway. At least I did when I was an assistant. So, knowing that, I think it's an easy conversation.
Yeah, I think this goes back to like you were saying before, like when you're photographing people and trying to like, whatever it is, put them at ease. It's like, it's kind of your presence. Like the job stuff might be like going crazy. You could be shooting outdoors and rain's coming and shit's blowing around, but like you still got to maintain that calm of like, hey, we got this, man. We're going to figure it out,
Yeah, actually, one of my favorite stories about that, like trying to maintain composure.
Yeah.
When everything just went wrong. Actually, luckily, knock on wood, hasn't really happened on a photo shoot for me as a photographer. But back in the day, I also teched for Peggy Sirota for a little while. And there was one job where, I don't know why, we only had one back. We didn't have a backup phase one back. And those little, like, those air blowers, those little red rockets.
Yep.
What you would use to like blow the dust off the sensor, I was seeing a dust spot, so they had to stop shooting. They handed the back to me, and I grabbed the rocket, and I'm holding it up, and I'm like, all right, I'm going to get this dust spot. And I like squeeze the thing, and the plastic tip of the rocket shoots off and bounces off the back of the sensor and leaves a very visible white scuff mark. And I think all the blood like rushed out of my face. My tech that I use all the time now, she was actually there on that shoot, and she loves telling the story because she was like, aha, all the blood just rushed out of your face. and the first assistant is looking at me, and like Peggy's wondering where her back is. And I just had to be like, I'll be right back. And I rushed over to the corner of the studio, and I found my like cleaning kit. And I pressed on that sensor as hard as I could, and I wiped it off with the like isopropanol, whatever it was, the cleaning solution.
Shit.
And And luckily it just wiped right off.
Yes.
And I came back and I put, I don't think I've ever been more nervous on a set.
Yeah.
And I put it back. We put it back on the camera, reconnected, and we kept shooting. But those, like, what probably felt like an hour of me just sweating bullets was maybe like 5 minutes. And, when we got it done.
Hey,
so
man.
you always try to keep composure.
That shit,
right?
that's the shit that keeps you humble, right?
Yeah.
Another shoot, man. I had to ask you about. You got to shoot David Lee Roth, man. Like, how what was this all about? Because like this guy's such a character. I've listened to a bunch of interviews with him. He just seems like such a quirky
Diamond
dude.
Dave.
Yep.
So I was doing, where was I? I was in Vegas. I did a shoot at the Billboard Music Awards, and he came back into the studio. I was shooting people sort of like one at a time. There was a lot of studios back there, and he came in, and to me at the time, it felt like just a very sort of natural, small interaction. We shot some pictures. He did the high kick right for me. Like, it was kind of amazing. And then his manager took my card. And then months later, I get a call from her, and she's like, David wants to do a shoot. And I was like, cool. Well, what's the shoot? She's like, well, he just wants to hire you to come to his house and shoot him at his place in South Pasadena. And I was like, okay, cool. And that first shot is one of the shots from that shoot. And so we went to his house. Like, we had a meeting ahead of time, then went to his house. We set up this like really classic sort of gray background, black and white. That's what he wanted.
Yep.
And we did a variety of these shoots. And he has some amazing hand poked tattoo art that he got in Japan. And he wanted to document some of that. So we did all of that. That was my first job with him.
And this was like he was just wanted to do it. Like, they weren't
just for him.
Wow.
No, I mean, I think he also had like a podcast, or he was, Diamond Dave. He's also like a DJs and something. Like, he probably wanted images just for, for promotion down the road, or just for him now. And then, so that one went well. And then he asked me to join him on the road at this was down in San Diego. And I also covered him here in LA when him and Van Halen were touring again. And so I got to shoot him. He wanted me to shoot him like pre-show, during show, and then after show. And, he's like, his brain is like no other brain I've ever come across, right? Like, the way he thinks and communicates what he's thinking is genius, but also at the same time hard to track. And so you almost just have to like listen, absorb, and then apply, right?
Was he like the type of dude? Was he like the type of dude? It's like, all right, let me look at the camera. Let me look at that picture. Was he?
No, not at all, dude. Like, he's the kind of person, like, we would have a meeting ahead of time. He then like allows you to do the thing, and then reviews everything after, like, and like, well, I'm talking like a week later, right? Like, he just wants to see the contact sheets later. And at first it was actually kind of amazing. He was so kind of traditional in the way that he edited this first shoot that we did at his house. I mean, I can't remember how many thousands of shots that I took of him. And they were like, he wants to see a contact sheet. I'm like, well, what do you want? You want four up on a contact sheet, 8 up? And they're like, no, print everything, one image per sheet.
Got a loop.
And ship it to him while he's on the road. And I was like, that's 2,500 contact sheets. Like, that's going to be an insane amount of money. And eventually what we did is I ended up going to Kinko's and just printing everything out on paper and I shipped him like 3 boxes of contact sheets.
Holy shit.
And just for him to edit through. And it's just an amazing process. But one of my favorite directions he gave me when shooting him, like pre-show, after show, was he's like, Martin, shoot everything. Like, shoot the land yacht, which is what he calls his RV, like shoot the TV, shoot the bowling ball, like shoot the beer can, shoot this, shoot that. Like, think about if in 100 years from now, somebody is going to look at this photo and think, oh my God, they used to do things that way. Like, we used to watch TV on a flat screen that was hung on a wall. And he's like, and that was I took that in, dude, and it's in my brain forever, because there's so many things in our lives that we just take for commonplace.
Yeah.
But when we look at photographs from 80 years ago, we're blown away that like, oh, that's how people used to do that thing.
Or even
crazy.
just think back to like remember when like iPods came out. iPod was like shit. But now you like look at that old like white is like basically like a hard drive shape. And now you look at him like we used to use that, and it's not even that long ago.
Yeah, no, exactly. And so I love that perspective. And that's what it was like working with him. Yep. He's just like this wealth of like rapid, like crazy knowledge, and he's just throwing it at you. And luckily, like some of it just made sense to me. And we went for it, because like his direction for shooting him inside the RV was like, I've been watching this movie. Are you familiar with the movie U-571? Yep. The submarine movie.
Yep.
Right. So like that was part of his direction on like, how do we shoot in this tight space? I loved it. I loved working for him.
He's a real artist. Do you enjoy that? Dude. Do you enjoy that when people are like collaborative in the process? Like some people probably just show up and just kind of stand there, but like other people have like an opinion. Do you kind of enjoy that back and forth?
Yeah. 100%. I think, just as much as like, a talented makeup artist adds to the set, like, a great stylist who brings great clothing and has good opinions, like can add to the set. Of course, like the talent being open to creativity. Like, I don't know if we've talked about this before. One of my favorite shoots, and I think it's on my site, is with Helen Mirren.
Okay.
And Helen Mirren from the get-go was like, she turned, after being introduced to her, and we started going through clothing, like she turned around to me and was like, Martin, what do you think?
Wow.
Like, what are your opinions on like what's your vision for this shoot? So I love it. Were
you almost like taken aback? Like, wait, for real?
Yeah, I was honestly, dude, I was a little speechless, because it's rare, right, for someone to have that sort of like presence as we're going through it, and sort of and respect for the photographer.
Yep.
And she's just an amazing human being, and I loved everything. I think this stylist that was on the shoot is one of the best out there, and and so for all to kind of come together, and she's just an amazing person to work with.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear, because that basically it tells you the reason why she is who she is and what she's accomplished is because she takes every opportunity she has. She's a professional. Like a lot of people could show up in kind of this brush that, oh, here's another photo shoot, but like here in your experience, she showed up and she was professional.
She was ready to create, right?
Yeah.
She wasn't. Because I think in some aspects, some people must show up and they're like, okay, well, they want me to wear this, so this is what I'm going to wear.
Mm-hmm.
Where she was approaching it like, oh, you want me to wear this? Like, do you want me to wear this? Like, do I want to wear this? Like, it was collaborative, and it was a special shoot, and I'll always hold this one like dear in my heart.
Yeah.
And one of the things I wish I knew going into this, but I didn't learn till months later, is that the surname Mirren is on the like endangered surname list.
Oh, really?
Like so like last names do disappear from the planet, right? Mm-hmm. And like I think if you're under 500 surnames on the planet, that you're on the endangered last name list.
Wow.
And apparently Mirren is one of them.
Damn, that's wild, man. I got to check out my last name, see if we're doing all right.
I think mine's fine. I think there's so many de Boers out there in the world.
Yeah, man.
I think, yeah.
Well, Martin, man, I could talk to you forever. We'll have to do another one.
Yeah, dude, this has been fun.
I guess to wrap up, man, like what's next for you? What's got you inspired? Like what's next for Martin?
Clubhouse.
Yeah, dude.
No, I'm just kidding. No, I mean, the pandemic it's been hard. Like things are slowly starting to open up. I do have a job that's potentially coming up beginning of next month, which, knock on wood, happens. Other than that, dude, it's the same of what I've been doing, just living life, spending time with my family and more recently being on Clubhouse
and making miniatures. Anybody, I'll link your photo website. I'll link your photo website and your photo Instagram, but go follow Martins_miniatures if you want to see Martin's miniature hobby, his side hustle. It's cool That's stuff. True. But yeah, Martin, thank you so much for taking the time, dude.
Yeah, thank you for asking me to do this. It's been real fun.
So there you have it. That was the Maarten de Boer interview. Just want to thank Martin so much for taking the time to come on the podcast. It was a real pleasure speaking with him. Definitely go check out Maarten's website at maartendeboerphotography.com, as well as his Instagram, iHeartMarten. Lots of cool work up there, and he's always updating it with different projects and his assignment work and whatnot. So definitely go give him a follow. And yeah, as always, I'll be having weekly podcasts every week on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, as well as the Photo Banter YouTube page. So definitely go check us out on YouTube. Hit the subscribe button. It'd be much appreciated. And as always, thanks so much for listening, and take care.